Hey everybody, well, I hope y'all are doing all right. Have I got a good video for you today? Now, this one's inspired by a viewer, and as you can see, I got this giant pile of rods in my hand. This is only just a handful of what I've got. And the viewer had asked me a question. I'm gonna get these out of the way here. He made a statement. He said, Chris, it just seems like you don't want to learn new techniques. Now, no disrespect to the viewer. It's a fantastic question. And as compared to writing it in responding and writing a book, I thought, man, this is a fantastic video on my take on what may seem like my narrow-mindedness on techniques, because I'm not. And what I've run into is, and I made some notes so I can keep up, because I got a quote for you on here. And over the years, as I grew up fishing, coming up through my early years to getting my own boat, watching the Bassmasters and everything, reading every article I could, learning from all the people I could, I was taking in an immense amount of information. And the number one of the things that every pro said, you got to be versatile. You need to be able to do everything. And I took that to heart. I did. I took it all to heart. And as I've said before, I learned to be a deep water fisherman before I was a shallow water fisherman. So I'd already learned a lot of these techniques of deep water fishing with small worms and jigs and, jigging a spoon and a lot of these other things. And then I began to move into shallow water fishing, like flipping and even spinner baits and buzz baits and a lot of other techniques. And man, I was just bringing it on like crazy, and I was doing okay. But as the years went on, I just kept compiling. I kept trying to learn more. And if a new technique came, I was all over it. I wanted to learn. I don't think I could swim a grub on 6-pound line. I could doodle. You wouldn't believe how good I can doodle a 4-inch worm with an 1/8-ounce sinker with some 8-pound line in 40 feet of water catching spotted bass with my old flasher sitting out there just, come on, babe, get them. I could do it. I could throw a crankbait. I could do all these different things, and I even went to the effort to go learn how to drop shot, realizing that wouldn't fit for me. But I was jumping all over it. I even learned how to fish swim baits when the storm wild eye came out, way before anybody even thought about throwing a swim bait. I was already almost won a major tournament with it. So I was constantly grasping onto anything I could, everything. But something happened. And I'm a simple-minded guy. I even had new boats for at the time, Lowrance X70s on there. These were top-end graphs at the time. It was as good as you could get. I learned to jig a spoon down deep watching them on my graph. Yeah, me. But like I said, something began to happen to me during that time. And I began to get confused. I began to be distracted all the time from maybe something that I was really good at, being distracted by something I was learning. And I began to miss a lot of opportunities to do well in tournaments because I was off doing something else, something new I had learned or something I didn't quite understand. And I had multiple tournaments where I really struggled, but really good friends of mine, even guys that I fished team tournaments with, would be like, man, what happened, dude? They're all over that shad wrap. I didn't even throw a shad wrap today. And he's like, what? Yeah, I was out throwing Carolina rig. Well, and they do good, and this began to happen more and more where I was failing because I might be out throwing my crankbait or flipping my jig, but then I get distracted with another technique and think I need to be out there doing that. And it began this push and pull for me. And I was constantly being drawn in different directions, and I was doing horrible in tournaments. I wasn't catching any fish. To the point that I was about ready to quit. Like, say, man, this just ain't for me. And I was just confused, and I couldn't understand why. I was learning the techniques. I had the best equipment. I mean, at that time of my life, I had the best boat. I had the best rods. I had the best line. I was doing everything. I was learning everything. But I wasn't catching no fish. I wasn't winning any tournaments. I wasn't doing good. And I realized it was too much. I was trying to be too much. And I had to really sit down and evaluate my fishing. Evaluate what I love to do. What ways did I really enjoy fishing? And I'd had a few really good wins along the way, here and there, but they were always based around certain techniques that I really liked, that I was really good at. And I began a process of eliminating anything that didn't fit with who I was. Because I started identifying who I was. What kind of angler I was going to be. What kind of angler I wanted to be known as. What kind of angler, if I did win, did I want people to go, oh, well, we know what he was doing. Because that used to be a thing. A lot of anglers were known for their style and their way. If they won, you could go, man, he caught him flipping. He won, he caught him cranking, a David Fritz or Denny Brow or Tommy Biffle, Tom Man Jr. You could about say, man, he was shaking the ringworm 40 feet deep probably. Not saying they were, but probably. And when I got to looking at the greatest pros out there, the ones I'm talking about, the Denny Browers, the Tommy Biffles, the Rick Cluns, the David Fritz, is they had a technique that was 60% of them was dedicated to that technique. And if the stars aligned and the conditions aligned and the lake aligned and everything came together, they were going to win. There wasn't no stopping it. If the right flipping bite came along, Denny was going to win. If the right flipping bite or whatever bite was going to happen, Tommy was going to win. Or any other technique that these guys were good at, if the stars aligned, they would win. And what I realized was I was getting more out of a handful of good top-level wins than I was trying to be versatile, trying to be, say, Angler of the Year. I was fortunate enough to win Angler of the Year in practically every circuit that was ever around on Beaver Lake. Practically all of them I won Angler of the Year. And then I won Angler of the Year in a major Oklahoma circuit and did well in point standings and BFLs during some of this time, but I wasn't winning any. And the Angler of the Year don't pay worth a darn. I won a major one in Oklahoma. It paid nothing. You get nothing for Angler of the Year. Good job. Sure, I get to carry that and go, yeah, I was Angler of the Year, and every pro's going to say it's the best. But I was losing my mind because I couldn't win, and I got a major win in a Pro-Am tournament. And what I realized was a major win like that would carry you for quite a number of years. You wouldn't, Angler of the Year, it's gone by the next year. It just seems to fade away. But you win a major tournament, and you can ride on that for a while. And what I realized was that's how I wanted to go about my fishing. I would rather wait for a win every now and then and let it carry me through to the next win as compared to fighting through all these techniques. Well, I've said a lot here. I'm trying not to go too fast. This is going to be a really long video because there's so much to this dynamic and why I do the things I do. So what I realized was, a guy like Denny, he'd get a win, and he might go a while and he'd get a win. He'd go a while and get a win. That's how I wanted to be. That's how I was going to establish my fishing. And when I really sat down, I had to go, all right, who are you and what do you want? And how do you want to fish? How do you love to fish? How are you most successful fishing? And I mean, it took some hard, and I began to take all that stuff out of my boat. If it wasn't aligning with who and what I am and who I wanted to be, then it had to go. Don't even worry about that technique anymore. Drop shot had to go. The spoon had to go. Some of this deep water stuff that I knew, I don't finesse worms. I don't keep them in my boat anymore. It's not that I can't do it and I don't understand it. It just doesn't align well with what I'm trying to do and what I want to accomplish. So I got that real narrowed down. And then I began to fish. And what I began to notice was I began to have quite a few really great finishes, some of the biggest finishes in my life. And because I was aligning those seasons with a certain handful of techniques. I established one as kind of the one, and I'd have one that was a little right behind it and another one. And that one might shift a little bit with the seasons, but they all complemented each other. So a flipping stick and a spinnerbait, they complement each other. A crankbait and maybe a Carolina rig complemented each other for me. Or a spinnerbait and a floating worm, or anything I did complemented what I was really good at. And so that was what became my backups. So in all that, just to say this viewer said something about chatterbait. Well, I've been down the chatterbait road. My son was an absolute expert with a chatterbait. He hated throwing spinnerbait. So all the time we spent fishing together, he would throw a chatterbait and I would be throwing a spinnerbait or pitching something behind him, and he would just be mowing them down with a chatterbait. And I began to go, oh, I got to learn this technique. It'll align perfectly with me. Well, I did, and I began to throw it quite a bit. What I found was I'd go down a bank and I'd be throwing that chatterbait and I'd be looking at my spinnerbait going, maybe I'll be throwing a spinnerbait. I'd really rather be throwing a spinnerbait. That's what I like throwing more, spinnerbait. Now I'll throw his chatterbait. Well, I'd go up through there and then catch one, and I'd turn around and go, I think I'm going to go back up this bank with my spinnerbait just to make sure. All of a sudden, I was indecisive on the bait I wanted to use for a specific technique, and here this battle started. So the spinnerbait and the chatterbait kind of are the same but different. What I realized was I need to stick with spinnerbait. It's my first choice. So always stick with it. That's just kind of the route I go. Not saying chatterbait ain't great and I've got them in my boat, but if I'm going to throw a chatterbait, there's not going to be a spinnerbait sitting there beside it. I need to commit to the chatterbait that day or whatever I'm doing. Stick with it, stay committed to it, and let it do its job, and don't be distracted. So it's the same way with flipping. I may have a beaver and a jig on, but I don't want a lizard, a beaver, a jig, a bellows gill, all those same baits on, because I want to establish which one of them is the best during the pre-fish time, and then I'm going to narrow down on that bait and really get committed to it because I want to try to win. I'm going to establish that bait prior to. Does this all make any sense at all? I hope so. It makes sense in my head. I hope I can explain it. So I began to narrow that down. So I realized the chatterbait was not necessarily fit well for me because it distracted me from my number one choice, which was a spinnerbait. It's the same way with having too many crankbaits that do the same thing. You got to be cautious about that. What I learned was when it comes to spring and let's say a shad wrap, I want to be committed to the shad wrap. And if I win, I want to be the best winner there with that bait. I'm not saying be too narrow-minded, but I'm saying I'm committing to the technique of the day. That's the why. That's why you don't see a lot of that from me, but it's not because I'm not always watching. I am always paying attention to a bait that will align with who I am. So that could be this bellows gill that I just began using this year, and I'm late to the party on that bait. But I realize that bait will align really well with some things I like to do, whether that's flipping and pitching or putting it on a buzz bait. And now I've added that. It's new. I've added that to my arsenal because it fits well with what I'm already doing. It doesn't take away from what I'm doing. And that's why you see that. That's why you don't see me making a lot of changes. I go through, if I'm going to bring something into my circle, per se, it has to be fit inside. It has to be as a piece of that puzzle, that circle. It can't be attached to the outside, because I see so many people they're trying to be everything all the time. They're trying to be everything to the fish, and all they're doing is running around losing their mind. They're doing it with electronics, they're doing it with techniques, and they're not getting committed to things that will allow them to be really successful. That's the way I see it. So I've chose to be that guy. That's how I look at it. I hope that makes sense. And I'm going to leave you with something. I wanted to be satisfied as an angler and being who I am. And I'm super happy with who I am and the way I fish. And these ways I fish make me happy. So I just stick with those. And that's what I use. I'm not, my brother, he doodling a worm on 6-pound line in 40 feet of water makes him happy. That's what he chooses to do. That's what he's going to do every tournament. And he's been a big tournament winner in the past on our local circuits because he was committed to who he was. And as I was going through this process, I'd watched a documentary. I'm going to leave you at the end with this quote. I've gone on for a long time here. And I can't remember the guy's last name, but he was the drummer for Rush. And his name is Neil. And if you know rock and roll, you know the band Rush. And in there, Neil had kind of got disenchanted with music. I mean, they'd hit the top. They were as great as they could ever be. He was one of the greatest drummers in the world. And he kind of, like, where do I go from here? And in this documentary, they was talking with him, and he kind of went through a bad phase. And I went through a bad phase for a while. And in there, he said, I can improve. He was kind of like trying to find himself out there, and maybe drumming ain't it anymore. He was kind of just, I can improve, is what he said. And then he went into talking about what he did. And I want you to listen to this. I wrote that. I got this on my wall. I scribbled it on this piece of paper. Not changing who or what I am, but improving who and what I am. Not changing who or what I am, but improving on who and what I am. For me, that is saying I can become a better flipper. I can become a better spinnerbait fisher. I'm still, as much as I throw a spinnerbait, I am still not as good as I could be at the techniques that I choose to use. So, like he did, I'm going to become a better drummer. I'm going to become better at the techniques I choose, the ones I love, the ones I want to do. That's why I do it. That's why it looks the way it does. I hope that helps you understand it. I hope it doesn't make you think I'm narrow-minded or that I'm ignorant to everything that's going on out there or other techniques. They're just things I don't choose to add to my circle. They don't complement me. I hope that helps you out there. This has been way too long of a video. I hope it helps you sort out this pile of rods like this right here, to where you can go, you know what? I'm leaving that one at home, and I'm leaving that one at home. And where you can go out there and be satisfied and content and happy in this sport that we all love so much. I'll catch you next time.